Across Silicon Valley, something unusual is happening. Google's profits are up. Microsoft is posting record earnings. Meta just had its strongest free cash flow in years. And Amazon's cloud business is accelerating again. On paper, it looks like the industry is thriving. Yet at the same time, these same companies are announcing new rounds of layoffs, not hundreds, but thousands. Why would some of the most profitable companies in the world cut jobs more aggressively than companies in crisis? Today, we're going beyond the headlines to uncover a deeper truth. In the modern tech economy, profitability is no longer a shield. In fact, it has become one of the clearest signals that a company is preparing for a different kind of future, one where the old rules no longer apply. At first glance, the current wave of layoffs sweeping across Silicon Valley looks completely out of place. The financial results coming from big tech paint a picture of strength. Google's advertising machine is stable. Microsoft is reporting record cloud revenue. Meta's cash flow is the strongest it has been in years. And Amazon is once again outperforming expectations in both retail and AWS. By almost every traditional metric, these companies are healthy, profitable, liquid, and still growing. And yet, despite this strength, the layoffs have not slowed. They've accelerated. Teams are being dissolved, product groups are merging, and thousands of employees across engineering, operations, and management are being let go. All while earnings reports remain upbeat. The explanations offered publicly sound familiar. Resource realignment, efficiency improvements, rebalancing priorities, reducing complexity. But none of these phrases answer the real question. Why now? Why cut workers in a moment of profitability rather than in a moment of weakness? Because profits alone don't tell the full story. Beneath the surface, something fundamental has changed in how tech companies interpret their financial strength. Profitability today does not guarantee stability. It signals that companies have reached a point where they must transform themselves to remain competitive in a future defined by different rules, different costs, and different expectations. To understand the layoffs, we need to look not at how much money tech companies are making, but how they are making it and whether that model can survive the next decade. One of the clearest signs that something deeper is happening inside the tech sector is the quiet shift in how these companies generate their profits. For nearly 2 decades, big tech relied on the same formula: expand rapidly, hire aggressively, experiment widely, and capture as many users and markets as possible. Growth was abundant, capital was cheap, and the global digital economy was still in its early stages. But today, the engines that once powered that expansion are slowing simultaneously. Smartphone penetration has reached its natural ceiling. Nearly everyone who wants a modern device already owns one. Consumer hardware sales are no longer driven by transformative upgrades, but by small, incremental improvements that fail to spark massive replacement cycles. PC and tablet shipments boosted temporarily during the pandemic have fallen back to pre-2020 levels. Even the digital ad market, once the most reliable source of high-margin revenue, shows signs of maturation. With a finite number of users and limited screen time, growth is no longer exponential, it is linear. And enterprise cloud adoption, while still strong, has transitioned from a hyper-growth phase to a more moderated, predictable trajectory. This shift in the industry's underlying growth pattern fundamentally alters the role of labor. When growth slows, large teams become harder to justify, and entire layers of management and support functions begin to look oversized relative to the industry's new pace. Profitability can mask this for a while, but it cannot reverse the structural reality. Tech is no longer a more people equals more growth industry. Instead, companies are learning how to operate profitably in a world where expansion is no longer guaranteed and where efficiency, not scale, determines long-term viability. This is the first yet often overlooked reason why layoffs are accelerating, even in an era of strong earnings. While slowing growth explains part of the story, it doesn't fully capture the intensity of the current layoff wave. To understand why profitable companies feel renewed pressure to cut jobs, we have to look at something far more disruptive happening beneath the surface: the financial demands of artificial intelligence. AI isn't just a new technology trend, it is the most capital-intensive shift the tech sector has faced in decades. Training frontier models costs billions, requiring massive clusters of GPUs, custom data pipelines, and uninterrupted energy consumption. And once these models are trained, the expenses don't stop. Serving AI at scale across search, cloud, productivity tools, and consumer apps requires continuous compute, ongoing fine-tuning, and specialized engineering teams whose compensation now routinely exceeds $500,000 per year. This is not optional spending. Every major tech company is in an AI arms race, and falling behind even slightly could jeopardize entire business lines. So companies have begun reallocating capital aggressively toward AI infrastructure. Microsoft's spending on data centers is surging. Google is retooling its hardware roadmap around AI chips. Meta is acquiring GPUs at unprecedented volume. Amazon is reshaping AWS around model-centric workloads. The problem is simple. These investments must be funded, and they cannot all come from revenue growth alone. That means something else has to shrink. Internal documents across Silicon Valley show a similar pattern. Non-core projects are being paused, middle management is being flattened, and teams whose work can be automated by AI tools are being reduced. The irony is striking. AI is being promoted as a tool that will create new opportunities. But inside the companies building it, AI is first creating pressure to eliminate jobs in order to pay for itself. This structural reallocation of resources, not short-term performance, explains why layoffs are accelerating even in a period of strong profits. Beyond the cost of AI, there is another transformation reshaping how tech companies operate: a fundamental restructuring of the modern tech organization. For much of the past decade, big tech operated like an expanding ecosystem: layers of management, overlapping product teams, exploratory research groups, and broad operational support structures. This model made sense in an era defined by rapid growth and abundant capital. But in today's environment, that structure has become too heavy. Internal restructuring documents across the industry point to the same conclusion. Companies believe they can operate more effectively with fewer layers, smaller teams, and more automated workflows. AI tools are beginning to handle tasks once distributed across dozens of roles: quality assurance, support operations, internal tooling, even some engineering functions. As a result, middle management is being compressed, redundant groups are being merged, and experimental projects with unclear revenue paths are being shut down entirely. The goal is not merely to reduce costs, it is to rebuild the company for a different competitive landscape, one where speed and efficiency matter more than size. Tech companies aren't just trimming excess. They are redesigning their internal architecture. And in that redesign, fewer people are required. When we put these forces together, slowing growth, rising capital costs, and the enormous financial demands of AI, a clear picture emerges. Big tech is not simply cutting back. It is repositioning itself for a new economic reality. In earnings calls and internal memos, a consistent theme appears. Companies are no longer measuring success by scale, but by operational leverage, their ability to generate more output with fewer resources. This shift represents a break from the last 15 years, when adding headcount was the default path to accelerating innovation. Take Amazon's restructuring of its retail and logistics divisions. What began as a cost-cutting initiative has evolved into a long-term re-engineering effort aimed at making operations faster, simpler, and more automated. Meta's year of efficiency wasn't a temporary reset. It permanently changed how the company evaluates new projects, team size, and management layers. Even Google, once famous for allowing experimental teams to grow freely, has begun consolidating product groups and canceling initiatives that no longer align with core strategy. These changes reveal a new management philosophy. Tech companies want to become smaller, sharper, and more capital efficient even when business is good. And the irony is that being profitable gives them permission to do this. Strong earnings provide cover to restructure aggressively without triggering panic among investors or employees. Cutting jobs during growth periods is no longer a contradiction. It is becoming a sign that the company is preparing for a more competitive future, one where AI plays a central role and where productivity is measured less by headcount and more by compute power and strategic focus. Today's layoffs are not a temporary correction. They are the blueprint for what the next decade of tech will look like. When viewed up close, today's layoffs can feel like individual business decisions, isolated restructurings, efficiency moves, or shifts in strategic priorities. But when you zoom out, a much larger pattern comes into focus. The most profitable companies in the world are cutting jobs not because they are weakening, but because the economic system they operate in is changing beneath their feet. Growth is slower. Capital is more expensive. AI is consuming unprecedented resources, and the management playbook that defined the last decade no longer works. Layoffs are simply the most visible symptom of a deeper transition, the shift from an expansion-driven tech economy to an efficiency-driven one. But this raises a far more important question, one that extends beyond Silicon Valley. If companies with billions in profits and dominant market positions feel compelled to reduce headcount, what does that imply for the rest of the economy? Because tech has always been a leading indicator. Its hiring booms and contractions ripple outward, reshaping job markets, investment flows, and entire industries. In our next episode, we follow that ripple effect to its logical conclusion and explore a far more consequential question. What does the tech layoff wave reveal about the future of the global economy? The answer may be the clearest warning signal yet.